right now I'm dedicating my time to reworking my men's work coaching website. I have the Spirit of Healing massage website, and that has spirituality stuff on there. But I have these separate websites, and it's felt like for a year or more of like, what do I do? I want to do both, or like both of these things I'm passionate about. How do they connect? Do they connect? Where do I put my time and energy? What should I focus on? What's profitable? Like all that shit. And so they're both going to exist, and I'm going to be building both. And I'm just very excited, more so right now, about the men's work. So reworking the website, and then creating structures for group coaching and finding the tools. Like, am I going to do it on Zoom, or do I want to use another platform like Mighty Networks and like all that kind of stuff? Am I going to utilize like Facebook group, like private Facebook groups for my stuff? And then like I basically I need to figure out those kinds of logistics. But then I have my like the other structures in mind too. It's going to be like revolving door group coaching, so people can enter and exit as they choose, or as they please. And maybe it's a monthly fee, or maybe they pay for 3 months to be in, and then they can pay for another 3 months or quarterly. I don't know. Um, and then I'm not going to be pushing. I am offering, but I'm not going to be pushing one-on-one coaching hard. It's the groups that's going to be the main offering. And then if you're in one of my groups, or if you find me somehow and you resonate and you really feel a need for one-on-one, we're going to do that. Like that will be offered and available. But I feel like group work is so much more powerful. There's so much more to be gained by working together with other men who are in the same position as you. We're all drinking from the same fountain. And so we can support each other and whatnot. And like, if you just need extra time and attention from me, then you will pay for one-on-one coaching.
Yeah.
So it feels like a great model. Like, I really struggled with the one-on-one coaching model for a long time. Something about it didn't feel right. It felt incomplete. It didn't feel it didn't feel complete, and it didn't feel like the most effective thing. So I'm happy to have that clarity. So it's just about building it now and starting to promote it
Mhm.
and find the ways to make that happen and make it easy and possible. So
I really think we're going to see a big trend moving toward healing in community, healing in group, because
yes.
something potent about being with other people. I mean, we could talk about the social nervous system, or we could just talk about being together and orienting yourself to another human or a group of humans. It's really powerful.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I too have been really working on the group piece, and I am really excited about an offering that I've been creating that sort of combines what I know about somatics, what I know about movement, and what I know about breath and the rest, relaxation response, pranayama, and things like that. I'm not a yoga teacher, so, and I don't want to be a yoga teacher. And what I am wanting to offer, like, isn't yoga.
Yeah.
And yet it's like movement in group, and
Yeah.
so it draws some pieces from yoga, but it's not yoga. And so I've been trying to really figure out, like, how do I talk about this in a way that's like inviting and not scary, because I'm not talking about ecstatic dance, but we're probably going to dance, and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think group is the way of the future.
Yes, it is. And did you sign up for that somatic coaching program?
I'm in it. Yeah.
Have you started it? Yeah.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Well, it's always on the weekend whenever I have my kids. So I'm always watching the recordings instead of being live, which is a difference, right? It's
Yeah.
not great. But
Yeah.
I've already made connections with people across the country who are, in the class with me. And so we've been processing the class together, and it's still really early. So it's kind of like we've been going through what is scope of practice and how do
Yeah,
you create a session and blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
So I feel like we're not in the meat and potatoes yet, but I also feel really inspired by it. And I'm excited for what it's going to contribute to what I've already known.
yeah,
So
cool.
yeah, and that's the other thing too with what we were talking about is like I've been working with a friend of mine who is helping me with marketing a little bit. She is trying to create her own portfolio, so we've been working together and I've been listing all of the classes that I've taken and all of the things so that she can know what I've done. And
Yeah,
I look at it and I'm like, wow, I'm actually in that program. I'm also still in my postpartum certification program. I'm in a biodynamic and birth program that's like all like self-paced or whatever.
yeah,
But it's like, it's a lot. Like I'm
yeah,
doing a lot of things and I
yeah,
love it all, but it's like, okay, really, let's talk about energy and where do I want to spend it? And
yeah, yeah,
I really feel like kind of not that this is the winter time, but like I feel a little bit like, okay, let's focus inward for a minute so that, come in the next few months, we can really push outward.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? I've always held winter and summer are the same thing, energetically. It's a platform. It's spring and summer or spring and fall or an increase and decrease. It's an on-ramp and an off-ramp. So it's like going to a place. I mean, spring and fall are a place themselves, but it's
Mhm.
like going, growing, reaching a peak, a pinnacle, staying there on a plateau for a while and coming back down and getting to this other plateau.
Right.
So it's just like the winter plateau is one of rest and the summer plateau is one of action.
Mhm.
But I can tell every year when I am, when my action in the summer plateau is over. It's
Mhm.
usually before nature's actual like descent into fall. I'm like, I've reached it. I've done so much action. I've done so
Yeah.
much growth and everything in this plateau in this season, and I am done. And it's like the earth still has a lot to do. And I'm like, all right, it's time to rest and
Yep.
we will wind down eventually, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I can
but
totally relate.
yeah, so what I was trying to say is like, there's a it's like a consistency, right? In summer, you come up and get into action, and then it remains at a consistent level for a while. And in winter, you come down and get into rest and stay there for a while. So it's like getting into that space where there's this structure, some kind of solidity, some kind of pattern, and like there's good things that come out of that. And there's kind of a rest in the pattern, in like such
Mhm.
solid structure. There is a rest because there's a consistency and a reliability and a trust and a safety.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
that was a whole tangent.
It was good though. It's so good. And I also before we get off, I wanted to hear your thoughts on Landmark. I read your post, but I also wanted to like hear your words on what you
Yeah,
thought about
yeah.
your
Um,
experience.
so it like the things that they were sharing are a lot of things that I have learned elsewhere
Mhm.
from places. And I do believe that those teachings are valid and important. I think what those concepts that they're teaching about, like not 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 defining things so solidly, like don't use the word is, things say like it appears to be,
Mhm.
right? And completion, that's important. I feel like that kind of integrity and speaking up and completing, tying up loose ends, that's really important. um being able to discern your story from the actual happening and disentangle those two is hugely freeing and empowering, right? Like I feel like that's necessary because you can be trapped in that and just live your life from this view of I'm a victim or I'm powerless or whatever, right? And so that's important. I think, and then also the whole idea of like they were teaching about like the formation of your identity, right? They were teaching about, maybe the way you behave as a reaction to someone else. right? Or the way you behave was because you got hurt or made a meaning out of something. Or your identity, you have created these patterns, which are your identity, are formed from these things. That I feel like is true. And like, not listening to the voice in your head, like that's great advice, like going beyond the mental chatter and trying to listen or act from a different place that's deeper from that. Very valuable, all these concepts. And also like pointing out the fact that we assign meaning to events and people in our lives. Hugely empowering and important and real, right? So all those are true, real, and valid. And I felt like there was an incompleteness to what they were teaching. In that
Mm.
incompleteness, there was not, from my perspective, there was not enough attention paid to individuals' feelings. Um, there was not like people were brought up on stage and they helped them separate the story from what actually happened, right? And they're and the way that they talk and the way they deliver is so pointed, so assertive that I think many individuals could easily assign blame or shame or guilt to themselves in the revelation of the source of the shit that they call their life, right?
Yeah.
The parts of their life that suck, that feel bad, even in the discernment of I made a story about that and I'm living in the story, which is painful. You could easily blame yourself for that, right? I didn't hear a word, albeit I did not participate on Sunday, but I did not hear a word to address the fact that you need not blame yourself. And I didn't hear them say, are you feeling ashamed or guilty for like you're now being shown the fact that you could be responsible for your life, right? You're responsible for the events that you're living in, and you created them, but you are not like the full creator, right? Like if events did happen, right? Like that was the other part I had a problem with. It's like you're a child. If your father leaves and starts a new family, if you don't have training, if you don't have people around you to help you make a different meaning of that, it is very, very easy to make the meaning that I am not good enough and my father doesn't love me, right?
Right.
So you are responsible for making that meaning, but the environment and that person is also responsible for the action that caused you to make that meaning. So you can't erase that. They put just a huge emphasis on you made that meaning, right?
Right.
And
Right.
they didn't give any attention to like potential for guilt or shame within that individual. They didn't speak to it. They didn't comfort it. They didn't, try to recognize. They didn't recognize that at all because there's not many thinkers in that group. There's repeaters,
Right.
and landmark. There's the people who are on stage are very good presenters and speakers, but they're not thinkers. They're reading from a script. They're going through the pattern that landmark has taught them. They're not looking for their own blind spots of what's wrong with this organization. We're claiming to help people and change lives. Where are we causing harm? You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
where could we do better?
Mhm.
And they're just happy to ride the gravy train.
Yeah.
Um, that's my problem. That's one of my problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious because one of the things that I thought was powerful about Landmark, and granted, I did this 9 years ago or something,
Yeah,
8 years ago,
yeah,
was it was my first experience of healing. Healing, I'm going to use that term very loosely in this
sure.
context, but
Yeah,
maybe we'll say transformation because
yeah,
I do think that's probably more accurate. Anyway, transformation happening in a group setting where like the person who comes up on stage, it's almost like you can't understand some of these concepts unless you see it in action with
yeah,
another human
yeah,
going through it. It
yes,
was my first experience of like group transformation
yeah,
and orienting myself to their story. Um,
yeah,
so I that was something that I think is also really valuable, but again, in this context, gets all weird.
yeah. I think it is tremendously valuable. Um, Not only are you seeing people being vulnerable and express their suffering, and also you're seeing a person who has shown up because they have a desire to change the suffering that they're going through, and that feeds you something, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it was hugely impactful and powerful to see people getting up there and being vulnerable because they want to change, because they're done suffering, and orienting, listening, just getting perspective. I mean, there are so many fucking stories and life circumstances that have happened that we have no idea about living from our own perspective
Mhm.
until someone shares, like, oh yeah, my father was in a biker gang and he did this and that, and you're like, wow, I've never even considered that fucking possibility or the outcomes or implications or impacts of it. But here's a person who that's their whole goddamn world, like that's just
Yeah.
wow.
I think that there's these big concepts that felt really powerful to me in the time, but now that we parse it apart a little bit about like what you just said, like, wow, I never thought that that was possible, or I never considered that as a possibility. And
Yeah.
it's like that is the power in storytelling, right? That's
Yeah.
the power in the campfire
Yeah.
vulnerability. We're sharing, swapping ideas and
Yes.
stories over just communication. Like it's the communication part. It's like core to our humanness.
Yeah.
Um,
They are very smart and right to use the word forum in that experience, because it truly is. It's not just someone giving a lecture and teaching. There is a huge amount of participation, and that is valuable.
yeah.
Not just a one-way street. I mean, think about college. That's you don't get much time to be up there and express.
Yeah, and I think that I remember there being a big emphasis on the people who were brave enough to share at
Yeah.
the mic or whatever.
Yeah.
And I also know people who sat in the audience and never went up there, but also got a lot of information, like got a lot of transformation out of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for that too.
Yeah. That's the power. That's one of the powers of the group. It's
Absolutely.
to see that in every man who's I've participated in their men's work. They say when one man works, we all work, or he's working for all of us, something like that.
Yes.
And it's just very true. To witness someone going through their transformation, through their personal insights and revelations, just makes that so much more possible for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's support, and there's encouragement, like, hey, you can do it too. Here's someone doing it,
Yep.
and you're showing them care and support, and that if you get up there in this safe space in this group, that you're going to receive the support and encouragement too in your process.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a demonstration of group support
Yeah.
where you
Demonstrate.
might not have any elsewhere in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, especially in our country that's like super hyper individualist, like
Yeah.
look at what I created on my own. I just
Yeah.
had this conversation with my son last night.
Uh-huh.
He was saying that one of his friends, I don't know if this is like a kid thing, it was new to me last night, but he was saying that one of his friends said the word Sigma. Have you heard this word?
Yes.
Sigma means independent man. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if there's more to it than that. That was what he told me, my 10-year-old.
How old? He's 10.
He's 10. And I go, okay, well, I want you to understand, because what it came was someone in his class was telling him he's not a Sigma
Yeah.
because what was it? He like asked, or he wanted to share his snack with someone, like a really cute little, like that's the way life should be. And all of a sudden he got called a Sigma, or a not a Sigma.
Uh-huh.
He said, the thing you have to understand is that we in this culture like to um glamorize or glorify independence. I said, but what we really need is interdependence. We need
Yeah.
to be both on our own and together, because when we're dependent, that's
Yeah.
like a baby. A baby is completely dependent on the mother for survival. But if you're independent and maybe hyper independent, that's not good for your survival either.
Nope.
So we have to find the interdependence. And I literally do talk to my children like this. And I really hope, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't, but I hope that he goes back to that kid and says,
Yeah.
actually, interdependence is the more important thing to have in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Um, that's just Well, I love that story, and thank you for sharing it with me. That feels really important because it's an indicator that the exploration or restructuring or building of new structure inside men's culture is affecting and reaching children as young as 10. Like that sigma is, one of the options between alpha and beta, right? It's like,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's alpha is I'm top dog, type A personality, I can have sex with all the women, right, and make all the money. That's so-called alpha. And then beta is you're a soft, tender-hearted man who is content to be in a somewhat invisible role in a corporation, perhaps, but is making money and providing for his family, but he's not this strong man, dick waving kind of dude, right? He's softer and maybe more introspective, right? And it's seen as negative. And then there was this whole talk. I don't know the history of this fucking conversation, but someone was like, oh, well, I'm a dude who just literally doesn't give a fuck about alpha or beta at all. I'm not trying to play that game. And that is a sigma, is someone who
Okay.
is who's like independent, who has like extracted themselves from the dick measuring contest, who is just living their life according to their own inner compass.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's also desirable within the confines of these definitions, and the people who use them.
It's interesting how talk about making meaning, right? Because that was definitely not the way it was brought to me from my 10-year-old.
Yeah.
So, you have to wonder like how, and he is learning about it from other kids in school. And so
Who are
where's
learning
that
about it from
coming?
their dads.
Yeah, or like video games or something. Who
YouTube.
knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It really like I think about, you're talking about homeschooling your kids um and just thinking about I've been thinking about kids in school. Like Carly's daughter is 10 and she's in fourth grade, and like I pick her up and take her to school often, and I recognized this a long time ago before like probably over 10 years ago or longer than that, 15 or more years ago, that like our culture has created a system in which adults are forfeiting the responsibility for forming their children's minds. We're surrendering that responsibility and that capability over to the school and the culture, right? And when I say the culture, I mean mainstream mainstream ideas that are delivered through available media, television, radio, internet, right? So the culture informs the children and their psyche through whatever they're listening to, whatever TV shows, whatever shit they've got coming in from there. And then the school, whatever culture and values and capacities their teachers have, right? That is also forming them. And it's like the hopefully the closest connection a child has is with their parent. And their parents can influence, like in this picture, I would love to, it would be cool to somehow get some data or some, experimental or like potential data. None of it could be confirmed, but like how much of the formation of the child's thoughts and beliefs are like how much is due to what they learn in school? How much is due to what they learn on television and internet? And how much is due to their family culture and what their parents tell them? Because it's going to be, it's case by case. It would be hard to make, generalizations, but it's going to be case by case. And it's just really interesting because we love our kids, we want to educate our kids, we want the best for them, and we are essentially allowing them to be formed by elements that maybe we don't approve of.
Yeah.
And I see that, and that's why I think the big homeschooling movement is all about,
Mhm.
and it's a lot bigger then I have a small awareness of it, but it's big.
Well, I mean, I've always wanted to homeschool, but various things. We could go into that, whatever. I
Yeah.
read a book recently. I think I might have told you about it, but maybe I didn't. It's called Hold On to Your Kids, Hold On to Your Children, or whatever. It's
Uh-huh.
co-written by Gabor Mate, and he talks about exactly
Okay.
what you're saying. It's co-written by him and another guy, I think named Gordon something, or
Okay.
um, but he talks about the history of how actually we used to be family centered, and when we moved into peer centered
Yeah.
um, child rearing, essentially, where like now peer I'm forgetting the words, but like where children care more about what their peers think and actually how the peers are raising each other, and
Yeah.
that's really dangerous because there's
Yeah.
no direction.
Yeah.
And how do we take back
Yeah.
the family centered
Yeah.
connections with our children?
Yeah. Yeah. And with the internet, the child like peer centered rearing can happen completely independently. You know,
Yeah.
their relationships, their most important and most influential relationships can occur online,
Mhm.
and they can completely live in that world now.
And I think that we have this really misunderstanding about parenting, and that and there's internalized capitalism, right? Because a lot of parents I talk to are like, well, how could I take my kids out of school? I have to work because I have to pay for things. Absolutely, I understand that. And how do we, like, within that model that we all have to live in, because hello, look at the economy, how do we start to change our understanding of parenting? Because I'm like trying to be really sensitive to like everyone's situation, because we are also missing the village, right? We're also missing how,
Yes.
like, so many times the screen becomes a babysitter because the parent needs a rest, and that
Yep.
is valid, because we're all working way too hard in our jobs. And so then when we get home, the capacity for like being present for your children is like nil, so it goes back into like, well, where is the little group of kids running in the neighborhood instead of a
Yeah.
screen? And where is the aunties showing up being
Yeah.
like, I got you on dinner, hey, we're going to make group dinner this week,
Right.
everyone come to my house instead of
Right.
your house, and
Yeah.
it's like we really have to change the culture, and if we want to do that, which means we're going to have to be vulnerable. We're really going to
Yeah.
have to be like, I can't do all this myself.
Yeah.
We're
Uh,
not meant to, and that's
no.
okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That this is the future.
Yeah.
We're at a major choice point and turning point in American history.
Yes.
And people see it, people feel it, people don't really understand that they are in a point in history that is tremendously, hugely important.
Yeah.
Um, we're at a choice point. We've lived through post-war economy, and we have this whole other beast has arisen, which is just like the nth degree of capitalism, like money by any means and devotion to it. And we are seeing and feeling the effects of it. And it's not good. It doesn't feel good, right?
Mhm.
So there's going to be a reaction. The pendulum has to swing the other way, right? Like because these values and these systems are inherently unsustainable, they will begin to break down. We're
Mhm.
already starting to see some of that, right? They cannot sustain themselves forever. It's not like the Earth. The Earth's ecosystem will sustain itself forever and grow because it's built in such a way that that allows for that to happen. Capitalism is not, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't honor relationships and it doesn't honor limits. Um,
Or life.
and yeah, or life, exactly. So it's inherently going to fall apart. And as that's happening in this moment, because we're all thinking conscious, capable adults, people are like the ones that are unconscious will just try to rebuild the old system, right?
Yes.
And that happens. That'd be an interesting exploration to see how that happens, like that the system just transfers itself to somewhere else in the globe. It's going to China right now, and it's going to Africa after that. And so like, but the people that are left here will try to rebuild or reconstitute the system when it doesn't work at all. So we're at this amazing choice point, turning point to reevaluate where we've got the data, the feedback that says it doesn't work and it's painful. So now we can choose what is a sustainable system? How do we create it? And who do we need to be to make it happen? You know, and like that will happen. There's enough of us, of millennials, who saw the promise of capitalism and saw it fucking destroyed in front of us, right? Um, and so we're like, well, let's not do that. I don't want that. It didn't work. Let's create something that works. I want to be part of a community. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of working my ass off. I'm tired of not being treated like a human being who has feelings and limits. Let's create something. Let's start creating. And what's happening here in my life and in your life, people are creating small groups where they can get together and be humans and recognize their humanity and see it validated and feel comfort and enjoyment in it, right? We're creating those in these little gatherings, and that's going to get bigger and bigger as people build businesses and build things from that space that are in alignment with the sustainability based on humans and humanity, right? And hopefully there is enough information. I mean, I'm working for that. Hopefully enough information gets encoded in the new building that says, don't sacrifice all this for money again, because we're going to be building new structures, and those structures can be co-opted and monetized very easily. And so there needs to be like a built-in immune system code that says, do not monetize. The monetization of our relationships does not equal greater happiness, peace, pleasure, or fulfillment. So don't monetize it. It doesn't get what you think you're going to get out of it.
Yep.
And we just have to start teaching that somehow. Do you know Charles Eisenstein?
I don't know.
He wrote a book called he's written several books. One of them's called The Ascent of Humanity. One of them's called the More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible.
The title.
It's so fucking good. I have
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
He is one of the greatest thinkers of our time, I believe. And he is very clear about monetization of relationship and its harm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll have to check that out.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
I think, how's this feel? Do you feel complete?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording and then we can connect before we disconnect.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.